First, I will talk about the timeline of China's supply chain. China's manufacturing industry started to grow in the 1970s since many Western countries were moving towards the service industry. The Western companies had to face with the problem of an increase in labor costs, and also as the living standards increased, it led to a higher cost of manufacturing. China wants to be an export country and has taken steps to prioritize domestic productions. The country joined the World Trade Organization in 2001 as the way to expand its global supply chain network. Since 2009, China has been the world's largest exporter of goods such as computers, broadcasting equipment, telephones, and then became the largest trading nation in 2013. Although China is still the world's top exporter, rising trade tensions and the COVID pandemic has created challenges for its global supply chains. China's exports have been growing steadily over the past decade. In 2019, its export of goods totaled a record high of almost $2.5 trillion. Industrial machinery and electronic equipment make up the largest part of China's exports. China's top trading partner is the United States at $481 billion worth of goods, and the following countries are Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam. Some factors that made China become the worst factory are the most populous countries and lower wage, supply chains ecosystem, basics compliance, taxes incentives, and currency. I will talk more details in the next slides. China is home to approximately 1.39 billion people, which is the most populous country in the world. Firms can benefit because a huge number of workers have to produce in large quantity and accommodate any industry requirements and demands. Also, the law of supply and demand tells us that since the supply of workers is greater than the demand of workers, the wage stays low. Although the workers' salaries in China have been increased significantly over the years, the average is still much lower than in Western countries. The supply chain ecosystem in China has been developed remarkably in the last 40 years. China wants its ecosystem to be connected and not isolated. The production relies on a huge network of suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, government agencies, and customers in a very cooperative and competitive way. The modern transportation system is also a support of the manufacturing supply chain schedule and shipping. The countries also established the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone to develop and emphasize the electronics, telecommunications, and medical industry. Shenzhen is the world leader in shipping and supply chains, and has the world's third business container port, while Shanghai is the top leader in container port. Next, while manufacturers based in Western countries are expected to comply with certain basic guidelines with regards to child labor, health and safety norms, wage laws, and protection of the environment, China's government loosened the regulations to boost domestic production. In order to meet the mass production schedule, workers may have longer shift hours with lower wage. China and other Asian countries are unlikely to follow the minimum wage laws like in the Western countries. The total cost of production is lower, and with the rule is loosened, making it easier for the manufacturing industry. Therefore, it will attract foreign investors who are looking for low-cost sourcings. Tax incentives also encourage business to produce domestically in China. Lower corporate tax of 15% in the Special Economic Zone, and also 50% deductions of R&D expenses. Also, China eliminates double taxations on exported goods, which are subject to 0% value-added tax. China keeps a check on its currency by buying dollars and selling yuan. By keeping the currency at a lower level, China makes its import more competitive in the global market.
How does China's supply chain benefit the global market? China is a leading manufacturer of the global supply chain network that provides for countries like the US, Japan, South Korea, and Germany. China accounts for more than 60% of their total exports. They provide countries with finished goods, but also provide them with intermediate goods that companies can use in their processes. Many countries are attracted to China due to their manufacturing strategies of low cost, great quality, delivery, flexibility, and their ability to react to demand. Their low prices and cheap labor held significant advantages over other nations. Not only are consumers enriched from multinational supply chains in ending the trade standoff between America and China, they also are a force of reason. China's domestic power and global impact has kept the economy relatively stable given the ongoing tariffs. The infrastructure, distribution networks, and production of trained employees in China are considerably superior to those of their peers in the developing market. If those shocks occur domestically or abroad, China will spread real shocks widely. In the context of reduced cost and productivity enhancing rivalry on a global scale, this often suggests clear gains for customers. With the rise of automation within China's supply chain, increase in the use of robots in warehouse, improve efficiency and security, helping minimize error. Here are a list of companies that benefit from China's supply chain: Samsung, General Motors, Microsoft, Boeing, Nike, Hasbro, Apple, Nintendo, and Intel. And there are many more that benefit off China's supply chain. Here's an example of how Apple benefited from China's supply chain. A key factor to Apple's success is due to China's great supply chain. Apple used China's manufacturing due to their skilled workers, advanced tools, and precision, for which they had to make their products, which they alone didn't have as a company. This shows Apple worked with China due to their great quality and didn't focus much on their price.
Some challenges or downsides to the Chinese supply chain are finding a factory, shipping low-end products, quality of work, and I'm gonna touch upon all of them a little later. A longer lead time and high minimum order quantities. The first challenge is the difficulties finding the right factory that's willing to manufacture your products. It takes a little effort, extra effort even, to develop relationships with facilities located literally across the globe on the other side of the planet. It is also important that you do your job, you do your due diligence, not only so you know you'll receive good service, but also to make sure that the facility you're considering is reliable and above board. You should, well, if you can, at least make one trip over to visit them for yourself, just to assure that they offer the quality of service that you're looking for. Also, you can look for companies online or visit trade shows, but doing so would involve, added costs, added stress, and added time, which you can't necessarily always afford. It can also be difficult to find factories in China that are interested in dealing with you at all, unless you're looking to manufacture hundreds of thousands of units. Shipping can be a real pain. Shipping from China means having your products packed up and put on cargo ships, which then sail around the globe. This leads to long lead times and significant shipping costs, which are not good. Depending on your distribution network, these costs can vary, of course. Um, Also, how you deal with the items once they arrive stateside is also an important consideration. It is usually much easier in this regard to deal with local manufacturers since inventory management becomes very important when you're dealing with international lead times. If your items are out of stock, your customers will go elsewhere, which makes sense. The added time spent in transit means that you always need to be thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead when dealing with overseas manufacturers. There's a certain stigma attached to the made in China label and a certain prestige attached to products made in the US or wherever else for that matter. Whatever you might think about the validity of these notions, the reality is that consumers value domestically manufactured products and are often willing to pay premium price for them. So people in the US would much rather buy US made products than other products. So they will um, have a bad opinion about products that are made anywhere else. And likewise for any other countries. Um, Also, this is something to consider if the margins you would be making by manufacturing in China or small. Once all the shipping, travel, and translation costs are taken into account, consider the fact that you might be able to sell your product at a higher price. I'm pretty sure we've all seen those knockoff purses, sneakers, and jackets that have been in China out of shoddy materials and cheap, and that are quick to fall apart, which also kind of feeds the made in China label stigma. However, manufacturing in China is not necessarily a death sentence for a product. In fact, Chinese manufacturers, they produce more good products than they produce bad ones. Another disadvantage of China's supply chain is the high minimum order quantities. Because Chinese workers typically work for less, which also means lower profit margins. The factories require very high minimum orders, which is the less set of stock the supply will have. If you look for this is why if for batch factory or was have to in China with high the first set of factory be difficult to factories and China are saying to less looking to manufacture hundreds of thousands of units. One other downside of having to deal with China's supply chain is the increased lead time that you encounter as opposed to, if you're dealing with a domestic supplier. Lead time, as you know, is the amount of time that passes from the moment you initiate an order to the moment um, it reaches its conclusion. Um, and a longer lead time directly affects your inventory levels. That means that the longer your lead time is, the more stock you will need to hold in your inventory. And sometimes, if you don't have enough items in your inventory, you're out of stock, and that means you're losing money, especially if that's a high demand product. Also, longer lead times make deliveries more unpredictable and force a company to rely heavily on demand forecasts to make orders. Another disadvantage of the Chinese supply chain is that government spending created a total of debt to GDP ratio of 217% as of the first quarter of 2020, which means that the country owes more than it can make, which is very bad. Also, yeah, this includes debt held by the government, corporations, and consumers. Since the state owns many corporations, it must be included. Um, the consumer debt may have also created an asset bubble, and urban housing prices have increased significantly as low interest rates fuel speculation. Um, Local government are also charged with providing social services, but are constrained in the taxes they can collect to fund them. That means with the little money they get, they cannot really help um, the workers. As a result, families are forced to save. China doesn't benefit to people who've moved from the farms to the cities to work. Like yeah, this is just emphasizing the point that I made earlier that the government cannot really assist the workers in giving them a better work environment. Interest rates have been low, so families don't receive much return on their savings. As a result, they don't spend much. That keeps the domestic demand low, and there is a slow growth in the economy.
China's global market during novel COVID 19. China has been fighting to stay competitive in the global market and continue to be the largest manufacturer in the world. So, the COVID-19 novel became the cherry on top of the ice cream. China was focusing all its efforts on fixing the damages caused by the US China trade war, but this virus outbreak has complicated the situation as it brought to the table the idea of stop centralizing the manufacturing in China. This pandemic forced China to stop the manufacturing of goods, affecting multiple sectors of different industries. As we are aware, Wuhan is the city where patient zero was located. Wuhan was the first area to be in complete lockdown, followed by many nearby cities. In a desperate strategy to stop the virus outbreak, China had to interrupt their activities and affect directly the manufacturing industries such as automotive, electronics, medical equipment, along with the pharmaceutical and consumer goods, all of them who depend on the material coming from China. China is considered as an indispensable part in the global value chain, and stopping their productivity took everyone by surprise. As a result of this event, the shipping of goods to other countries and within China caused a big disruption in the life of the manufacturing industries and the supply network. Subsequently, what was done by China to mitigate this event and flip the coin back again to their favor? Many companies try to work around this problem and the uncertainty of this event. In the beginning, they took low cautionary measures to prevent the spread of the virus by following the rules imposed by the government. By the time that the government confirmed how easily and quickly the virus was spreading, the companies changed gears and implemented a strong method to reduce the possibility of contagious diseases. In addition, they start to plan on outsourcing work, rethink about the logistics, and make sure that the different products were still being produced. On top of all the measurements created by the government and the companies, China adjusts their market accordingly where there was a shift in the manufacturing or retool. When automotive business was down by more than 90% in China in February, automobile manufacturer Shanghai GM Wuling quickly retooled his production system to produce medical face masks, which positively contribute to mitigation the COVID-19 spread and at the same time generate rewarding revenues and positive reputation for the company. China compensated the shortage in production, moving towards where the demand was high and produce goods so they could provide jobs and reduce the amount of people being laid off. China's economy was affected, but at the same time they have a point in their favor, and is that the major consumer of their goods is in China. A lot of American companies are really in China to sell to China because that's where the market is. Very few of them are there to export to the US. This year, during the single day event on November 11, Alibaba shows double the total gross merchandise value from last year for a total of 498.2 billion yuan, which is equal to $74.1 billion. Last year's total was 268.4 billion yuan. American brands generate about 5 billion, positioning them as the top seller to China.